Welcome to Reflecting Light. This podcast is about filling the world with light by exploring myth, ancient texts, scripture, great works of world literature, and the works of artists, past and present, for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And now, here is your host, Mandy Green.
Hello, and welcome to Reflecting Light. Thank you for joining me today. My heart is very full and agitated and so many different things. Today's topic is all about the heart. I've been led to this topic all week. I've been binge watching Crash Landing on You, which is a Korean drama, and I can't get enough of it. It just hits my heart, all of the wonder and the beauty of love and relationships, and I love the portrayal of it so much. If you ask my family at all, I usually never waste time watching TV, but I cannot help myself. So if you need a happy thought or you need some type of great distraction, I would even say noble a little, because I think love is a noble thing. I would recommend that Korean drama on Netflix. It's really quite sweet. And I feel like in our Western culture, everything's so hypersexualized or unsexualized. We can't have a healthy conversation about sex, but all of our protagonists go to bed with each other in pretty quick timing, and we forget the beautiful nuances of looks and holding hands and taking care of each other, which is really what today's podcast is about. My heart is sad and weighed down by the news of Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. Anyone who's studied history at all understands that this is a very serious thing, and it may have very serious global effects that we all deal with. And my heart goes out to all of those people on those fronts. I have dear friends in both Russia and the Ukraine. And as we know, governments rarely do the things that are in the best interests of their people, yet the people are the ones forced to pay a heavy toll for that. And my prayers are with both countries. My prayers are with the leaders of those nations. My prayers are for the hearts of everyone, that they would not lose heart, that they would find a way to be brave and persevere. And that is what today's podcast is all about. We're told that in the last days that the love of many shall wax cold. This is really, really such an interesting use of this word. Did you know it's only used in this particular verse? And it really means to breathe out, to make cold by blowing. These winds of affliction and tribulation blow to such an extent or at such a velocity that they can chill something to the bone. It can also mean spiritual energy blighted or chilled by a malign or poisonous wind. It's only used in Matthew 24:12. Well, what do we do? What do we do? How do we keep our hearts intact as they break and as they are heavy and as they are agitated? Is the Greek word often used in the Savior's words to not let your hearts be troubled. He says, don't let it be stirred up, agitated. And it's important that we do the things that would keep us grounded, our hearts soft, our hearts reaching out toward others, so that these cold winds don't make us cold. So these cold winds don't isolate us from each other and we fail to feel. Now, I know it's hard to feel because that means we will suffer. But the suffering is greater to take on than becoming numb to it. And I feel there's a lot coming down the pipeline. It's important that we steel our hearts, not in a cold, unfeeling way, but that we fortify them, that we strengthen them so that they don't wax cold or grow cold from these winds of change. In Matthew 24, the apostles are asking Christ, what will be the sign of your coming Well, let's go to their question in verse 3. When he was seated on the Mount of Olives, the disciples, and those are his pupils, that's another word for disciple, came to him privately, saying, "Tell us when these things shall take place, and what will be the sign of your coming and the consummation or completion of the age?" That's actually a really great question. And Jesus answered them, saying, "Be discerning." I know your King James says take care, but the word there is actually blepo, which means to be discerning, to be looking with spiritual eyes, to be aware, to have your spiritual sensors on. So be discerning so that no one leads you astray or causes you to wander or causes you to take a different path. For many will come in my name saying, "I am the Christ." Now, the phrasing here is really interesting because ego eimi is the Greek equivalent to I am in the Old Testament. And so any phrase that has I am, I think is a reference to him as the God of the Old Testament. I am the anointed one. And they will lead many astray. Again, they will divert you. They will cause you to wander or go off on the wrong path. And you will hear, and the word there is mellow. So it even means you're about to do or to see or to suffer. All of those are part of that word mellow. So mellow. And then you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. And then again, this word, to see with the mind, be discerning. See that you are not frightened or agitated. Now, this doesn't mean that you aren't affected by it, but it means that you don't let it go crazy on you. You don't let it make you lose heart. Now, anciently, there's two ways of looking at the heart. I thought about doing this podcast in 2 different installments, and we'll see what happens next week. But because of what's happened in Eastern Europe, I want to talk about both of these aspects just a little bit, because in our current world, your heart is your feeling center. And we look at it in terms of feeling, love, emotion, compassion, all of these really, really amazing things that actually fuel goodness in the world. Anciently, the heart was seen as the seat of intellect, meaning that all of your knowledge was stored in your heart. And in the weighing of the heart ceremony of the Egyptians, you were weighed in the balance. Your deeds, your works, but your knowledge, you had to have the knowledge to pass by the gatekeepers and the sentinels who stood there. And so when he says, don't let your heart be afraid or agitated, it means trust who you are. Trust what you know. Trust that you are given spiritual gifts and discernment and revelation and all of these things that will see you through this. Now, the great weapons of the adversary are sin, which, as we know, if you're new to the podcast or old, hamartia means to miss the mark. It just means you missed the mark. So we need to try and hit the mark, but the world is not over if we don't hit the mark. Eventually, we have to hit the mark. The other thing is death. I think we've seen with COVID that the fear of death can really make a lot of people lose heart or let their hearts grow cold. Now, I do not in any way want to minimize this, but if you are a believer in Jesus Christ, you hope for a better world and you know that there's more to come, that your spirit doesn't die, that it goes on. And so it's really important that we keep the big perspective, that we don't let our hearts be crushed by the information and the fear and this toxic concoction of Kool-Aid that would make us lose heart. So we need to have that presence of mind. Now, the organ of the heart is what propels the entire body. In Hebrew, the word is lave, and in Greek, it's cardia. And sorry, I said that with a different accent, cardia. And what's interesting is that the Egyptian hieroglyph had a breathing pipe going down to the heart. Well, we know that they knew everything about the way a body was constructed. We don't want to look at that hieroglyph and think, oh, man, those Egyptians are kind of morons. They don't know what it looks like. No, it's very intentional because the heart is the lifeblood of the soul. The heart is what is a place where you would treasure what is beautiful and kind. There's a celestial breath. Remember that when Adam and Eve were created, when Adam was created, the breath of life was breathed into him, right? The Spirit of the Lord breathed this divine breath into the soul of Adam. And in Egypt, that symbol, nefer, is the breath going to the heart. And so I think that's a great illustration of this divine breath, this divine life that actually powers your soul. That's the essence of the material of the heavens and what keeps you alive and going. A couple of years ago, my dear brother-in-law's heart started to fail. And I don't know if you know this, but in heart damage, you can't undo it. And I think that's a really beautiful illustration for all of us, my friends. Did you know that the human heart, once it loses capacity, you don't get it back? And so he was down to the teens, and basically there was not much more that his heart would be able to do. Now let me pause there and say it's important that we keep our hearts fit for our souls, for our minds, for our compassion. Again, that we don't lose capacity when we hit hard times like these. He and his family had to make that decision of whether they die or let him try an artificial heart. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen an artificial heart. It kind of looks like a glorified garbage disposal. And when I saw that, I had such a reverence for your actual organ of the heart, this sleek, beautiful muscle that will beat thousands and thousands of times a day to keep you alive, and has these rhythms and these electrical pulses that we don't even think about, and the beauty of hearing that heartbeat every time. As a new life is conceived, the first thing you look for is that heartbeat. And the heart is the center of life. If you don't have heart, you will not live. Your heart is what powers the whole organism. And so in a Hebrew sense, remember that Hebrew is a very active language. This sense of heart is what sustains you, what literally keeps all the other systems of your body going. And so all of these things are beautiful things that would teach us about the heart and keeping our hearts strong and not letting them faint and not letting them lose capacity and not letting these cooling winds of affliction and suffering that are in place right now, and I think will continue to head across our world. It's really important that we don't lose heart in all of the senses I've just outlined. Well, back to my story. My dear brother-in-law, Craig, was at that point where his heart had lost so much capacity that they attempted to put the artificial heart in. And it's really quite amazing, this whole process that's in place to try and replace this sleek, beautiful muscle that fits in the palm of your hand. And it's replaced by this giant kind of garbage disposal pump that actually has an entire console that goes with it to try and power the heart. It's humbling as they saw that that transplant was not going to take place. And I don't know why I feel prompted to share this, but whoever you are, this is for you, as it became apparent that that was not going to be a viable option for dear Craig. He began to understand that he had a very limited time left on this earth. And so, of course, friends and family came in. Family was there. It was a Saturday morning, and some family had come into town. And so everyone went to the hospital. And I remember staying home because there was a certain amount of visitors that were allowed. And I wanted to make sure that the immediate family had the opportunity to talk to him. Well, they came, they went during that day. And this has only happened to me maybe twice in my whole life. The Spirit imperatively told me, you need to go talk to Craig. I remember I was cleaning my shower and it became very insistent. Mandy, you need to go talk to Craig and tell him that he does not need to be afraid of meeting me. It became so relentless that I got in my car. I drove over to the hospital. He and his dear wife, Carrie, were there in that room. And Craig hadn't spoken for a long time. He wasn't able to speak. And I just looked him right in the eyes. And I said, Craig, for whatever reason, I was sent over here to tell you that you never need fear the Lord. That you don't need to be scared about meeting him. That he loves you. And he understands you better than you think and you know. And he insisted that I tell you that. And we just held each other's eyes for a really long time. Not long after that, Craig passed to the other side. And I love this phrase, passed, because our world is a messed up place, my friends. And to pass would mean that you pass the test, that you took on mortality the best way you could. You try to keep your heart as intact and full of knowledge and compassion and all of these good things. But that letting go of this celestial body, this coat of skins, and letting go of the winds and whips of outrageous fortune is actually sometimes a very beautiful thing. And you've passed on. You get to go to the next stage of learning. Ever since that experience, I have a very special place in my heart for the heart, for the importance of our hearts, importance of knowledge, the importance of compassion, the importance with filling our hearts with true and virtuous and good and hopeful and beautiful things, and stilling our hearts against these winds and these storms that are coming or have come, or maybe you're in the middle of one right now. And I would just want you to know that I would encourage you to take heart and not to lose heart. Years ago, at the beginning of the podcast, I shared this article by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. It's one of the best things I've ever read. So before her time and exactly for our time. And so in her beautiful spirit that she writes these words, and I invite you to just sit back and take these into your heart. My friends, do not lose heart. We were made for these times. I have heard from so many recently who are deeply and properly bewildered. They are concerned about the state of affairs in our world now. Ours is a time of almost daily astonishment and often righteous rage over the latest degradations of what matters most to civilized, visionary people. You are right in your assessments. The luster and hubris some have aspired to while endorsing acts so heinous against children, elders, everyday people, the poor, the unguarded, the helpless is breathtaking. Yet I urge you, ask you, gentle you to please not spend your spirit dry by bewailing these difficult times. Especially, do not lose hope. Most particularly because the fact is that we were made for these times. Yes, for years we have been learning, practicing, been in training for, and just waiting to meet on this exact plane of engagement. I grew up on the Great Lakes and recognize a seaworthy vessel when I see one. Regarding awakened souls, there has never been more able vessels in the waters than there are right now across the world, and they are fully provisioned and able to signal one another as never before in the history of humankind. Look out over the prow. There are millions of boats of righteous souls on the waters with you. Even though your veneers may shiver from every wave in this stormy royal, I assure you that the long timbers composing your prow and rudder come from a greater forest. That long-grained lumber is known to withstand storms, to hold together, to hold its own, and to advance regardless. In any dark time, there is a tendency to veer toward fainting over how much is wrong or amended in the world. Do not focus on that. There is a tendency, too, to fall into being weakened by dwelling on what is outside your reach, by what cannot yet be. Do not focus there. That is spending the wind without raising the sails. We are needed. That is all we can know. And though we meet resistance, we more so will meet great souls who will hail us, love us, and guide us, and we will know them when they appear. Didn't you say you were a believer? Didn't you say you pledged to listen to a voice greater? Didn't you ask for grace? Don't you remember that to be in grace means to submit to the voice greater? Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. Any small, calm thing that one soul can do to help another soul, to assist some portion of this poor, suffering world, will help immensely. It is not given to us to know which acts or by whom will cause the critical mass to tip toward an enduring good. What is needed for dramatic change is an accumulation of acts, adding more, continuing. We know that it does not take everyone on earth to bring justice and peace, but only a small, determined group who will not give up during the first, second, or 100th gale. One of the most calming and powerful actions you can do to intervene in a stormy world is to stand up and show your soul. Soul on deck shines like gold in dark times. The light of the soul throws sparks, can send up flares, builds signal fires, causes proper matter to catch fire. To display the lantern of soul in shadowy times like these, to be fierce and to show mercy toward others, both are acts of immense bravery and greatest necessity. Struggling souls catch light from other souls who are fully lit and willing to show it. If you would help to calm the tumult, this is one of the strongest things you can do. There will always be times when you feel discouraged. I too have felt despair many times in my life, but I do not keep a chair for it. I will not entertain it. It is not allowed to eat from my plate. The reason is this. In my uttermost bones, I know something as do you. It is that there can be no despair when you remember why you came to earth, whom you serve, and who sent you here. The good words we say and the good deeds we do are not ours. They are the words and deeds of the one who brought us here. In that spirit, I hope you will write this on your wall. When a great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe. There can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for. Isn't that amazing? I'll share that in the show notes of today's podcast. You can find that at mandybgreen.com or mandybrookgreen.com or reflectinglight.org. I'm revamping the whole website. Hopefully it's much more accessible. My dear friends, that is what great ships are built for. And we come from a greater forest. If you've listened to any of the earlier podcasts about the tree, you would know that you're built of the best stuff there is. And that now, more than ever, is the time to reflect that light, to hold steady to your course, to know that you will outlast this storm. Maya Angelou said, every storm runs out of rain. And it is imperative that we help each other through these storms and through these royals, from the first second to the 100th to the 1000th gale. I have the feeling that shit is about to get real, my friends. And it's important that we take care of our hearts, that we steel up our hearts, and that we keep them soft. We keep them to where they could discern and be moved and be in a place where we would have insight and revelation on how we can help, on how we can continue to reintroduce and shine our lights into this world. I will be at my prow for as long as I have a voice and as long as I'm able to stand, my friends. I will do everything I can to continue to reflect that beautiful light into your life. The song for this week is By Your Side by Sade. I hope it will give you comfort. I hope you will know that none of us are alone in this. As John Donne says, no man is an island. That we're all part of this great family of man. And that as we stand, as we shine, as we don't fear, but that we understand that we were made for these times. Perhaps that will give us courage and give us heart to continue on in the fight. My prayers and love go out to all of our friends in Russia and Ukraine, and to all of us. Know that we stand with you, that we will send our hearts and our love and our light your way.
Thank you for joining us for Reflecting Light with Mandy Green. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave a good rating and share it with your friends. And remember, your light makes the world a brighter place. Share it.